Thanks very much. Just listening to Ian there, just thinking those Kilkenny fellas must have been full of testosterone all the time. Just know how they did it. Look, what I want to do is to give a kind of a personal, my personal experience, and I suppose it's not just related to the time I've been involved with Tipperary, and sort of my coaching goes back a bit before that, and it's probably maybe 35 years I've been coaching at all levels, from juvenile up to all the grades, from junior up to senior, through intermediate. So what I've tried to get across, I suppose, is some of the things that I would have learned and some of the things that I would have felt might be useful to people like yourselves who are involved in coaching, whether it's hurling or football. Obviously my background is hurling, but trying to understand a little bit about what it is that the coach should be and what it is that the coach should do, and what it's all about, if you like, because we all enter into, we arrive in the pitch with our gear and with our balls and with our hurleys and we start. Sometimes we don't try to figure out what it is that we do and how could we do it better. And I suppose just before I begin and trying to figure out what I'd say here, a key for me is about coaching is about educating. It's about being an educator, and it's about pushing people to be the best they can be. It's about making sure that you have create the conditions, both individually and collectively, that a group of people can come together and to deliver what is the best they can be. And in a sense, to do that is what I want to try to tease out. And I said, I'm not finished teasing it out yet, because you never know enough, or you never really know. And I think it's one thing about being a coach and being involved in the GAA and being involved with teams is how much you still have to learn. No matter what age you are, no matter where you've been, there's so much, I think, to learn. I think that's what I want to try to get across. Okay, so the first thing, if I can remember now how to work this. Yeah. So the first thing really that interests me about what we do is that I'm talking about hurling now. The first thing that I think about when I think about being involved is, what is the game? What is it that we're trying to do here? If I was to ask people in this room what the game of hurling is, or what the game of hurling means to them, I think that's one of the first things that I have to challenge myself, if I'm going to be effective on the pitch. Whether I'm involved with the local team or whether I'm involved in the county team, what it is about the game that I think is different and is different to me. Because my approach to the game is going to be slightly different than your approach, but it's still the essence of the game of hurling that we want to get across. And that enthusiasm, that passion, that belief in the game, if you don't have it, you can't coach. It's not the sense that you don't have to know the game can be learned. But you have to have a view as to what you want to communicate here. And in a sense, I believe also, especially in the GAA, and especially being involved in the GAA and believing what the GAA is about, that it has to also fit into your life. For me, sometimes I find it hard to differentiate the game from my own life, or hurling from the other parts of my life. That is an essence of being of yourself. And I think that's in a sense also, I think you've got to ask yourself the question, how much does it mean to me? How much does it mean to communicate these ideas? I was in Cuba recently, and I was talking to, believe it or not, late at night, a salsa dancer. He was pretty good. And I asked him, so how come you're so good at this? He said to me in Spanish, it's hard to differentiate me from the salsa dance. So in a sense, he was saying that he was the dancer that he was, And I think that's a little thing about to me before you even start is, what it is that you want to do. Whether you're a Tip man or a Galway man or a Waterford man or whatever club man you are, what is it you want to do and what do you believe in? And that's where I would start the position. And in a sense, part of that is, what sort of game do you want? It'd be a very boring world if we all had the same game, wouldn't it? If everybody played like it is. Now, the thing about Ian Robertson winners is everybody wants you to play like the winners. And everybody wants to copy the winners. But sometimes you have to play different than the winners if you want to become winners, and sometimes you have to challenge yourself to do things differently Yeah, and that's a real challenge, isn't it? It's a real challenge when you have a set of beliefs and people are saying to you, you must be more like the winner. Because the winner does this, why don't you do that? Why don't your players do that? Why can't you be more like the other? Why don't you do things like they do? And you end up not knowing who you are. And I think one of the things about when you start, you have to figure out who you are and what your team are and what kind of game do you want. And I think that is in essence the starting point of what I think you have to do. So what game do you want? That applies also at a national level, because we have many different games, haven't we? We have the club game, we have the schools game, the third level game, the national game, we have the national spectacle of a game. So before we even begin out, where do you fit into all of this? Because those games are different. The social game, the club rivalry game, parish versus parish, is different than All Ireland Day in many senses. The schools game is different. The social game is different. Competitive versus non-competitive games. But what I would looking for in the hurling game is an enduring and sustainable game. For an enduring, sustainable game, everybody has a role to play in developing sort of the coaching of young hurlers, adult hurlers. That we have to have a vision of what the game is about. That's not for today. That's not what I'm talking about today. But I wanted to say it at the beginning. Like, what is the essence of the game here that you want to transfer down the generations? Yeah? And what it is that's good in the game that you want to keep. And whose responsibility is to develop the game we want to do. There is no one game. The game is evolving. Even in the 3 years when I went from coach at Tipperary to manager at Tipperary, the game had changed. It took me nearly a year to catch up. So it's constantly evolving game, but it's a question I think we as, particularly the hurling community within this room, has to ask itself. What is the game we want played? Because if you look at that slide, look at what we have to deal with. From school to club to the whole range of game. From competitive to social to national to the spectacle game. The All-Ireland is a spectacle game, it's a global game. Yeah? But behind that is the essence of the game that you want to create, that you and me as coaches, that I'm working with now as an under-16 team. What the type of game that we want to create that evolves then into the national spectacle, and that's what today is about. It's about giving my experiences that might help you and also help me as I go back the line now into trying to figure out how I approach this again. So that's what I want to do. But the game is everything. The game is everything. It transcends the individual, it transcends the club, it transcends our inter-county rivalry. The essence of the game is what we want to see, can we make better. So one of the things that's interesting is, if I was to ask everybody, what is success? So if I'm a county chairman or of a club, I suppose the immediate thing to say is we want to win the championship this year. Now, we all want to win the championship, but only one team wins the championship. Only one team wins the All-Ireland. Most of us lose in this room. If you look at even this morning when Eamon Hennessy was presenting, the success rates of even the most successful teams. Yeah, 60%, 66%, 70%. The last game, only one team wins the last game of the season. So all of us, in a sense, have to ask ourselves the question is, and continuously ask ourselves the question is, what are we doing and how do you measure that success? And the question for us all as coaches before we enter into this is, what should define you? Winning gives you a sense of credibility, it gives you a sense of fame, but is it what you want? Ultimately, all the time to be looking to be winner, winner, winner. Yeah? Because sometimes you're going to lose. The winners write their own history, but my view is that the coaches as well, you have to have a strong belief in the ethics of what you're doing in success. So success can mean winning some games, most games, developing players, developing a style of play, little bits and pieces during the year when you do better than last year. And you should never throw away those, or never let your team throw away those. And one of the things that I would always say is, what did we do well today? And Liam Hennessy mentioned it this morning as well. What did we do well today, and how can we do better? Rather than start with, how did you do better? Because, the world out there, and you figure out this very quickly if you're an inter-county manager, the world out there is full of people who tell you what you didn't do well. Sometimes your team needs to hear what you did do well, because there'll be plenty of people telling you what you didn't do well. We've all been guilty of that as fans. But it's what you did well and what you define as success. All the time you're pushing towards an expectation of excellence, but you have to learn how to deal with this. And the critical thing for me is, as a coach, don't let other people define you. You have to be really strong and say, well, okay, nobody knows better than a coach who's lost or a manager who's lost what that means. But if you let it define you, you're not going to be able to lead your team the next week, the next 6 months, the next year. So I think you've got to be able to think about structure and performance, about what you're setting up and why you're setting it up. And that goes back to my first slide. What is the game you want to play? What are the values you want to have around you? And what's your measure of success? As I said, winning is critical. And we get that testosterone jump from winning. We all do. The feeling it gives you is crucial. But sometimes you have to have something else also running along. And set those goals that reflect your views and not anybody else's. And I tell you, it's a hard thing to do if you've lost 2 or 3 games in the trot. I lost 2 or 3 games in the trot in 2014. It's really hard to go back into that and say, and keep believing in what you want to do. And that's why you have to have, in a sense, people around you and structures around you that allow you, to keep going, keep tweaking. It's not that you're stupid. We know when it's not working, we have to do something. But it's that belief that keeps you going. So I just put down a few things that I have found useful just to reflect on. Is success. Now I'm not. That's a question. Success is dependent on what you define it. Yeah. So put your version there. If it's winning for you only, then it's winning for you only. If it's other things as well as winning, then it's up to you what you want to put down as success and the people surrounding you. So for me, I think I've just picked out a few things. The common vision, the team you have around you, the personal attributes, the leadership within your group, the confidence around you, and the resilience that you build up. All of those are going to matter to you down the line. So let's look at some of these in terms of what I mean by common vision. So everybody has a story, but it has to be your story. I've seen people come to training sessions that I have done. I've seen other people going to other managers or coaches, and it's relentless sort of writing down what you've just been doing and seeing, can I use that? Can I use that? That's fine, as long as you're creating a narrative for your team or a story for your team that is your team. People again want you to be like the winners, but you've got to develop something that fits your team. What team have you got? And you've got to build that around it. Now, if you're manager of Tipperary, you've got to build your story around that team. You can't build it around another team that plays another way, that are stronger. You can learn from them, but you've got to have your own identity. Because without that identity, at the first sign of trouble, you're going to fold. So that's what you have to create, and hopefully the structures within it are created, because it's not only the coach does it, it's the county board does it, it's the people you have around you does it. You need all that to be successful. It's hard enough to be successful, anyway, but without that around you to have that common vision, and the best teams have it. And I would point again to Kilkenny, having that supportive structure around their team, that to know exactly what it is they want to achieve. The values that you have, we take these for granted. These are words that we're often used now. New words like honesty, self-respect, humility, all of those things that we take for granted in our normal life. That are important to us. If you're trying to transfer values to your children, or you mightn't always call them those things, but you'll want those things. These are also important in successful teams. And the example, the much hectic example of the All Blacks, and when Graham Henry came back, he had to reinvent the value of the All Black, 8 years ago, or 12 years ago now. As to what, to remind ourselves. And we have to constantly remind ourselves about those values, because they're hard learned and they're easily lost. And when they're lost, you simply don't get them back in a day. They have to be relearned as well. So you have to take the time and in a sense to assert those. The high-level goals, the question is, you have to know what you want to do, and the team has got to know it with you. There's no point in you coming in and setting goals for a team and saying, this is what I want to do. If the group is looking at you and saying, well, it may be what you want to do, but we're not sure yet what it is, it's what we want to do. And maybe we don't believe we can do it. So therefore you have to set goals that maybe are incremental, that can be changed when you believe the team are ready for another set of goals, or another to move up another rung. So I think you've got to be really careful and try to know the team, but you've got to set them and you've got to include people. The inclusiveness. In my view, everybody in the setup is critical. So if you come in as a manager or coach and expect that immediately, that you're the man that's going to lead this, or be the only one that'll take this over the line, it's wrong. Because one of the things, you've got to be constantly challenged. So you've got to find people in your group, in your management group, in your backroom team that will challenge you. If you don't have people who will challenge in your backroom team, you're not learning much. So you've got to choose people around you who will challenge, but yet who will be loyal and supportive. And you have to include them. There's no point in having people if you exclude them from decision making, and so on. And the old thing again that we're realizing more and more, whether it's in real life work or in sport, people matter first and foremost and last. Yeah? And again, this is what you're dealing with all the time. You're dealing with people, and players and people are first, and developing that culture takes time. And what about winning in that vision? Well, we all want to win, and winning is what we want to do. That's why we're in sport. The highs and lows of what you get from winning, the feeling you get from winning there's nothing better. But you lose. Sometimes you lose. And you start off with just winning, and if you miss the importance of what you create and you're constructing something here, a process, a framework to allow you for the team to develop. If you forget about that, sometimes you can't control winning or losing. Sometimes the opposition is just better. No matter what you're taught afterwards, you should have won that match, you should have won the other match, why didn't you win this match? Sometimes it's hard to win, sometimes you can just be unlucky. All of those things you've got to take on board as the coach, and build it into developing your team to be eventual winners. That's the goal. The goal is but you have to be aware that just because you lose does not mean that it undermines everything you do. And that's really hard to do, lads. I tell you, when you're under pressure, you know that yourself. When you're under pressure and you lose, and you lose again, and you're trying to fix it, and you lose again, and you're trying to fix it, it's hard to stay then believing and making those adjustments. But that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do if you believe in what you do. And my view my first question to anybody who'd ask me if I would like to be involved in a team, or would I like to coach a team, or would like to manage a team, my question my point back to them immediately is, well, do you like what I do? Do you understand the way I do it? Because if you don't pick me to be your manager, or don't take the job, because you're going to need the people who are going around you to support you, or give you enough time, and stick with you, to do it. So if you don't like my vision, then don't let me near your team. If you believe that the way I think about the world is not the way you believe should be thought about the world, there are other views and legitimate views. So working as a team, I would say none of this is new to you, and I don't claim any great originality. I'm just filling you in on what worked for me, or what I thought works, and so on. Collective responsibility for that kind of culture and atmosphere around the dressing room. So that means that you've got to create a culture around the place that's geared towards excellence. So one of the things when Liam Sheedy was manager of Tipperary, he was a fantastic manager, right? So one of the things that he brought into that culture was that kind of responsibility, that kind of shared responsibility for things. You can't abdicate responsibility if it's your team. If you're a player and you see things going wrong and you keep your mouth shut, without going through proper channels to get to the manager or the coach, I don't think you have ownership of that team, right? Or if you see things in that culture, disrespect. If you see your team disrespecting a referee, that's not on in my view. It has to be dealt with in time. Same thing as if in a hotel. If your team is disrespecting. Now we all make mistakes. It can happen. But as long as the culture is one of one where you have everybody is working as a team, selecting the right people, and that means taking your time in recruitment, taking your time in getting the right people around you. There's no point in realizing after 6 months that it doesn't work here, or if you've got to get the right people around you, and in particular developing people, especially yourself. The thing I said at the start, as a coach, the one thing about it is constant learning and development. That's the key in my view. Developing people, but also developing yourself as a coach all the time. If you think you know it all, then you're wrong 1,000 times over. Yeah? So you can learn, and you can learn from your players, particularly. And that's why you have to listen to your players. You don't always have to do what they say because, they're better off playing normally. Yeah, but you do have to listen to them, and you do have to hear what they're saying. And, for example, sometimes we react to a bad performance through more training. Do more. We have to do more. We have to train more. More hours. Sometimes it's less. Sometimes it's actually doing less. So the team will tell you that. Your backroom team will tell you that. Your people giving you video stuff will tell you that. People just observing will tell you that. And all of that, you need to pick up on the mood of your players. You need to have information on, who's sleeping well, who's stressed, who's not stressed. All that information is coming through to you. But you have to have people around you who can handle that set of data. You can't as a coach. And you won't have it anyway if you're a coach in an under 16 team or an under 14 team. You're there in an under 14 team, you're trying to figure out, the biggest virtue you can have in an under 14 team is patience. How many times is a guy can do the thing wrongly before you figure out, okay, I've got to figure this, I've got to be patient here. Where you can say to an adult player, you say, look, come on, mate. You need to perk it up here. But the under 14, under 16 player, you may have to wait a couple of years before the message gets through, and it may never get through. So, you've got to create, and the other thing about enjoyment, we talked about enjoyment. What's enjoyment? For me, the only enjoyment you get from coaching is when it's challenging. I get no enjoyment from going to a training session that's not challenging somebody, either through complexity, giving them something to do that challenges them and says, I can't do this. A player comes up to me. There's been times in Tipperary where I would be trying to explain an idea I had, right? And completely get it wrong. Balls would be hitting me. Players would be running into me. And the players would just go, yeah, okay. Right, we'll figure this out. And somebody would say, no, what you need to do, well, first of all, you don't need 6 balls here, you need 5 balls. So somebody would tell me that. But it's the trust and the sense of creating an environment that is challenging, and you're not afraid with that environment that when it goes wrong, yeah, or if it doesn't go right for 6 months, or it doesn't go right for a year, if you have that luxury of a year before you get sacked. That's why you need an understanding chairman. But the point of getting at is, it's experimental sometimes. If you want to do something that's different, then you have to have the players, and the players have got to be in that with you. Because if they're not, if they don't believe in you, you won't last. You won't last long. But they've got to believe in what you're trying to do is challenging them. The key to enjoyment is, and this is a key message, is challenge. Challenging them to be something different, challenging them to work on something different. And that's at a level, whether it's your under 14 team up to your senior hurling team. And the learning never stops on what's working and what's not working. So the personal attributes then. If you don't know yourself, it's hard to get to know anybody else. We all have weaknesses. And some of us have a lot of weaknesses. Yeah? And sometimes you have to go on your strengths. And you have to bring in people who are better than you, who know more than you. Or you've got to send your players to say, why don't you talk to him? Yeah, he's really good on this, or she's really good on that. You've got to know yourself, and you've got to be yourself. If you walk into a dressing room and pretend to be somebody else, and your players know that instinctively. The players would have a view of me as the manager which would be close enough to the truth. Because you don't spend 3 or 6 years with somebody and not get to know them. So there's no point in me coming in and pretending I'm, banging a hurley against the table that look at me and say that I needed to be, taken out of the place, or given some sedation, because it wasn't me. Yeah? So they've got to know you, and they've got to understand you, and they've got to, and that sense of you've got to know that as a coach. And that takes time. So it takes time. Don't rush into it, is my view. Don't rush into what, you'll make mistakes, but get to know yourself and what works for you and what works for your team. The passion is something that I think in the GA, and that relation, that passion is, sometimes we take passion as running up and down the sideline and, beating the drum and so on like that. But passion, the best passion lies a couple of feet inside somewhere. It doesn't always have to be shown in jumping up and down. But for me, the game and the relationship to the game, and it goes back to the first slide, like, what is the game of hurling? Like, what is the rhythm you want to play the game at? What is the level of aggression you want in the game? That level of physicality, that level of, rhythm, that kind of beat of that drum for a game, right? That's the game. And that's what we want in the game, and that's what we want to develop in the game. And then you decide, well, where do I want to be on that line? What do I want my team? How do I want my team to play within that? And that's the passion. And we all have different types of passion. Yeah? And I bet everybody who's involved with a team here in this room, right, is deeply passionate. And don't ever, in my view, be ashamed or afraid to show that in different ways. Sometimes loudly and sometimes silently, to the game. In terms of personal attributes, I think one of the things about being positivity. Positivity is something that you have to be critically positive. There's no time for being positive. If you tell a player, geez, you're great today, and deep down you're thinking, you weren't. They know straight away. So there's no point in being positive as a thing from being in line to them, because if they know they're studying you as a manager or coach all the time. I mean, that's the one thing you learn when you're a coach of anybody. There's 30 eyes on you, or there's 60 eyes on you all the time. So they're looking at you as the coach, and they're taking their cues from you. So if you're lying, or if you're being two-faced, or if you're not telling the truth, they'll know it. So when I say be positive, it's be positive in your communication. And that sometimes means telling somebody, you really aren't playing the way I want you to play, or you really have got to go home and spend a couple of weeks on this skill, or whatever. That's the positivity. It can be positive within giving a message, a critique, but it has to be honest. And so too can be ruthless. I think I was only getting the hang of it when I left Tipperary. But you have to learn. You have to learn that ruthlessness can be learned. So those of you who take a job as a coach, say, have I got the ability? Because it's a messy business. Leaving off players and cutting players and so on like that. But it can be learned, and you just have to take the time to learn it as well. All of that is important because it communicates messages. It can be done positively and so on like that. But what I would say to people who maybe say, have I got the, whatever it is, you're asked to get involved, you're under 14 team, you think, have I got the passion? Have I got the ruthlessness to get involved? I think you have. You can learn this. And if you're involved in the GA, you have it. You mightn't show the passion like everybody else. You mightn't show the ruthlessness like everybody else, but it can be learned and developed. Leadership is critical. The group is looking at you for leadership. The group is looking at you for leadership. But the group is also looking to lead. If you walk into a group of adults, and you look around the room, or somebody's telling you, what, there's no leaders in that group. I immediately say, are you telling me there's no leaders in that 30-man group? Right? Maybe nobody's asked them to be leaders. Maybe nobody's showed them, how to be leaders. Because it's easy if you're maybe 50, 55, 60, and you've gone through a work phase where you had leadership. It's more difficult when you're in your late teens, 20s, and to step out and say, you know what? I'll show leadership. Because you don't know what it is. Or maybe you're showing it and nobody has told you it was leadership. So fellas would say to me, I'm not really a leader. And I said, do you remember last week when you caught a ball, when nobody else would catch a ball? That's leadership. Nobody ever told you that, about what is leadership. So we certainly would have taken the time to try to work people through, to select our leadership group, to change our leadership group, to encourage our leadership group, to listen to our leadership group as being key. In my view, and again it's different from people, power to is more important to me than power over. So power to do things. So if you give it over, you have to accept the consequences. So if you give power to a group or power to an individual and they mess it up, there's no point in coming back and say that, why did you do that? So if you give them power to, for example, make decisions about what they're going to do out of competition or between matches, and they go out and have a few drinks, and they make a decision, you know what, we did went out and have a few drinks because we feel we wanted to unwind. So you come in on a Wednesday night and you say, you shouldn't have done that. Well, you told us we could make our own decisions. Okay, you can tell him you made a bad decision, but you can't. Leadership, you've got to trust it, you've got to adjust it, and you've got to give feedback. But you can't take it back once you give it. Once you let the genie out of the bottle, you've got to take the consequences and you've got to develop. But training and development is the same as any job. This is at adult level. But you can also do the same for kids. You can see who are the guys who are leading. You can, in a warm-up session of under 14s, under 16s that I had last Saturday morning, so I'm trying to see what I have at the moment. See who are the guys that will step up. Who are the quiet guys? Who are the guys who maybe want to lead or are shy? Who are the guys who pretend to be leaders but aren't? The guys who actually won't make good leaders. So this is about getting to know the team. And if you facilitate and encourage expression, again, you can't turn the tap off. You have to mind it. They have to know who's the manager. They have to know who's the coach. They have to know who makes the final decisions, but you can't turn the tap off. And one of the things about, sometimes, especially when you see the managers on telly and the elite level, you think we're premiership managers or something. People are talking about. I always found it funny when the journalist said to me, "Your team," or Eamon or Shea's Tipperary, and I never felt that I owned anything. When I was involved in Tipperary or whatever team I'm involved in, I have simply been given the privilege, right, of representing a tradition and a sporting sort of virtue within a county, and I've been for a short time at the head of it. So when you think about that, if you thought it's that which gives you the confidence. So therefore, if you have that confidence out there, you sometimes got to relax. You can't control everything. Everything can't be when you go into a session and say, you know what, we're under pressure. So if you lose 2 or 3 league games, you can't go in the next Tuesday night and say, we're under serious pressure here. Something has to be done. And the players looking at you, and you're coming in and saying, I'm not sure what has to be done here. So you go the next day and you say, okay, let's go out and enjoy ourselves. Let's go out and play. Let's go out and do something different. Let's go out and, again, put more pressure on ourselves. So relax. It's a sporting organisation. It's a game of community. If you don't win the championship, there will be short-term grief. Why didn't you win? There will be criticism. But it's a game. It's a community. We are not premiership managers. You are not a premiership manager managing your own under-12 team. Or managing the Tipperary team. We are community in the GAA. Some of us lose and some of us win. All of us want to win. But the essence of the game is that you can't control everything within the game. I'm not sure where my time is, but anyway. Just a few things about confidence. So it's quite clear that confidence is everything in a game of hurling, and in sport. The confidence to perform and how you get to that stage. And it comes from you. From the minute you walk in before a match, 3 hours before a game, you walk into a room, right? Your players are watching you. So if your players think that you're not confident, or you don't think it's going to happen today, then it's not going to happen today. If you walk into a dressing room and you're thinking, I'm not sure this, it's not going to happen. You have to walk into that room that they look at you immediately and they get confidence from you. Now, it's not, and you can learn it. Ian is right, you can learn it a bit. Your body language is important. I learned, your body language is important. You can learn so much. But it's about the confidence in the team and the system. So even when you lose, I remember we lost the league game this year or last year against Dublin, the first round of the league game, we were terrible, and we were down to play it again the following week, and we could have spent a week thinking, is this going to be the start of a poor league campaign again? But if we didn't have the confidence in what we were doing, we wouldn't have been able to go out and win the next week. So that confidence is critical, and it's built around belief in the game plan and belief in the system, And in the same way as you wouldn't expect Kilkenny to deviate from their philosophy, neither would I expect Tipperary to deviate from their philosophy, or my own club team to deviate from their philosophy. That belief in what you do, and you can develop the mental things for success, the mental skills, and Ian spoke about some of them earlier. You can develop those in players, and sometimes it's just pointing the player in a particular direction, the visualization stuff, the posture stuff, the encouraging stuff. It's not. It's sometimes a small word. When you're dealing with younger players, say under 14s, under 15s, under 16s, you don't bombard them with, here's the latest paper from, the Neuroscience Journal. You say, look, what I've learned is that maybe, if you spent a little bit thinking about your position, maybe even without the ball. So last Saturday morning in our warm-up under 16s, we just put them into, I just said, okay, where do you normally play? Cornerbacks go back, fullbacks go back. So you're going to spend 2 minutes there without a ball. I just want you to imagine everything that you're doing in the game. So we had six positions on the pitch. Or played a position, then they were imagine catching, blocking, hooking, spending 2 minutes of it. It's normal stuff. But like no ball, and I said, did you enjoy that? And they did enjoy it because they were and adults the same way. We did that. We just, okay, imagine what you're doing here. Because if you don't imagine it, it's unlikely to happen. If you can't see yourself doing it, then you're not going to do it. Now, it has to be replicated in training, and then, you can't be imagining blocking, and the coach then says, we know what blocking, it's all imagined. That's covered. You obviously have to move from the imagination to the reality of the thing. But you know the point I'm making. You have to buy into that. And I would say use all the senses. I'm a really great believer in using all the senses in the training session. So smell, touch, feel, everything. So your forwards just get them to see, can they hear the net shaking? Just get them to see, so when they shot, can they actually hear? Forwards are inbuilt to hear the net just going, slight tremble. It's just a slight tremble. And if you say to them, did you hear it? Or when you're striking the ball, where's the sweet spot on the hurley? And you really on wall ball, it's about the sweet spot in the hurley, the strike perfect. And they'll get to know the sound. This is for young players in particular. It's all about the senses, and particularly if you want them to understand space and you want to understand movement, they've got to be in tune with the players around them. The days of going out and say, play your own game there, play your own position are gone. All the good teams, all the successful teams now are working on a one-mind philosophy of where they're moving. And if you saw Damien's stuff this morning, where a player is only, so many seconds on the ball, 2.5, 3 seconds of play, it's the subconscious that's working. You've got to have all that worked out. And you've got to have all your players thinking about what they're doing the rest of the time when they don't have the ball. So how you organise them to defend, how you organise them, to find their positions on the field, new positions on the field. And let me tell you, if you're looking at success and failure, and say, from my own time, I would say I didn't get to that stage. I never got to that phase where I'd be happy that we were playing in the way we wanted to play. Even though we had a plan, even though we had a strategy or a structure, I cannot say there might have been snatches in the game. And this is aside from winning and losing now. This is aside from, did we win the All-Ireland? No, we didn't. Leave that aside. Did we win the All-Ireland in 2010? Yes, we did. Leave that aside. I'm talking about wanting to get to the game as you wanted played. Did we do it often enough? No. And that's in a sense what you're all the time looking for as a coach. Games-based training, I think one of the things that we know now is that, and this has really been led here from Croke Park as well, by Pat and the rest of the lads. It's like games-based training when you're striving to all sorts of games. Like we played games in spaces between the 14 and 21, 30 players across the pitch, 15 versus 15, within the 21-yard line and the 14-yard line. Like it was trying to find space within that area. So it's a hard job to find space within the 21 between your 21 yards line, your 14 yards line with a schlitter, with 30 players in that space. But it's something that if you think about, you begin to think, if you open up the space between, say, the 21 and the 45, now you begin to see things differently. So it's, again, the environment. And in a sense, that's what the games-based training is about. It's about finding different ways to excite players, to challenge players. That's the key. Whether they're under 12s or under 14s or senior players, get to the level which just pushes them to a level slightly that they're comfortable with. That's the key in terms of the coaching. Okay, confidence, you have to give them responsibility, you have to give them autonomy. There's nothing like giving a player responsibility and autonomy for to make their own decisions. But then back them. Even when you don't agree with it, you say, no, I don't think I'd have done that, but you were there at the time. You were to make that decision at the time, so therefore, if you say to them, no, don't do that. I told you, do not do that. They will never do anything for you again. They will never feel they can make a mistake. And there's one thing that we certainly did. We certainly made loads of mistakes. I'd say we're probably the most mistake team in the country. But we did it trying to do that. I suppose the one thing that we also know about levels is trying to do this under pressure. It's a real thing, isn't it? When you see your players being able to play at training, and then when it comes to the match situation or the last 5 minutes of the game, why can't we close it out? Why are some teams better than others at closing it out? Why can't we win in the last 5 or 10 minutes? Yeah, you can send me an answer to that question on a notepad. But you're looking to see the pressurized situation. So you've got to put them in pressurized situation. And that's one of the things I feel about the whole structure of the hurling championship in particular, or hurling thing. We need more matches. Training doesn't give you that environment. You can set it up. And that's why you should do this. You should do it. If you have another 14 or 16 team in a league basis where you have 7 or 8 games, don't be afraid to try things under pressure. Last 5 or 10 minutes. Try something. It may not work for you, but you have 6 more matches. So do things in matches. To try things, if they don't come off, you're learning all the time. One of the things about the senior championship is, the hurling championship is, we have too many training sessions. I'd like to have 1 training session a week and 1 match the weekend and do it like that. That's when you can really get your team together. And the other thing I think we talked about, personalise the messages. There's no point in going into a dressing room and say, you were all terrible today. Or you played well today. A player needs to be told. And sometimes a player needs to be told to play well. Don't be afraid to tell a player you played well. It's a message that we all love to hear. You played well today. Fair play to you. You don't have to have a full page document on it to him. Just you played well today. Yeah, happy. And that's all you need to say to them, because they need to hear, and equally they want to know. And I've made these mistakes. I've made all the mistakes. Everything I've said there, I've done the opposite. Everything I've said for the last 15, 20 minutes, I've probably done the opposite at some stage. Yeah, where I haven't said to a player, well played today, and he's wondering, or I haven't said to a player, no, you didn't play well today, and this is the reason. I didn't act as a coach should. I didn't tell them what the issue is. And therefore the player was left wondering and frustrated. And you can ask players, and they were frustrated with me. So, I think it's just something we have to keep on learning. Resilience. This is an important part. It's a word that probably there's other people use different words. So it's dealing with success and failure. Success is equally difficult to handle as this is failure. Because particularly if you have too much success too quickly, and particularly if you keep failing. But you have to know that things do go wrong. I know that. Things can and do go wrong. But what you have to do as a coach or manager is stay calm. It's the hardest thing to do. Because as an elite, at an intercounty level, when you come off the pitch, the first thing they'll say to you, so what went wrong today, Eamon? And you're thinking, I can't even think straight. I don't know what went wrong today. And I'm hurting so bad that I can't even put a sentence together. here and now. So, but you've got to keep calm. And the same way when you reflect on your under-16 team or your junior team or your senior hurling team, what went wrong? You've got to be calm. You've got to stay in the now. You can't project 3 matches. What if we don't win the All-Ireland? This happened last year as well. So you've got to try to analyse it and get people around you who will analyse it properly, and you're not responding. And that communication, very often, particularly the most important time you're communicating to your team is in the 24 hours after your defeat. So in my view, when you do a media interview, this is at elite level, you're communicating to your team straight away. So the question is asked, but the communication to your team. Within a 24-hour period, if you make a phone call, you have to make the calls to the people you want to talk to on your team. It's staying calm and building that resilience, building the fact that we can be better. What did we do right? What can we do better? And very often it's experience. Very often you have to go through the hoops. Very often you have to go through the defeats. You have to take the hits, in order to get to the point. But you've got to give a meaning and a context for a performance. You've got to give what happened there. And you've got to try to be better the next day. What happened there? They have to know from you what happened there, because they're asking themselves that question. So if you come in and just say, well, nothing happened there, or if you come in and say, well, I'm not going to say anything to you today, in a couple of days after the match. The worst times I feel to talk to your players is immediately after the match. If you're coming in and angry with your players, if you're coming in and you're probably not making sense. So I would say be calm, building that resilience, stand by your men and women on your team. They expect you to, and you'll get a huge, huge return from it. You can tell home truths, but you have to stand by you, and they have to stand by you. And they have to, and that combination is critical for ongoing success, not only with the team you have, but in the system you're building, the project you're building around. For the manager or the coach, you have to have your eye firmly fixed on that vision I talked about earlier. So there's no point in wobbling. I remember a situation in 2014, we played Kilkenny in the league match down in Nolan Park. We got a great start. I think we were 9 points up or something. They'd brought it back to 6 points at half time. And I made a decision at half time. I said, okay, we'll pull back. We never did this, right? But I said, okay, let's maybe push back. We'll play with 5 up front. I'll push back a kind of a half sweeper, right? Kilkenny ended up beating us. Nobody said that to me in the team. The next week, we played Galway down and we got beaten again by Galway, and that was 3 defeats in a row, and we were getting pretty narky with each other, right? So the first thing the team said to me is, what did you do last Sunday? And I said, what do you mean, what did I do? We were ahead of Kilkenny. You brought back a player to defend. You told us at the start of the year about your vision, that we would never, ever defend. We would always attack. What happened last Sunday? Why didn't you trust us? That was the question. And it was a legitimate question from players who had a manager, me, who told them this is the way we play. And because, I got giddy, felt we could beat them, and I was saying, okay, we'll go defensive, and the team wanted to know afterwards, so why didn't you have the trust in us? So here was I couldn't say inexperience, I made a mistake, we never did it again in that context, if we had a view of ourselves as a team, and that's the way they wanted to play. The next Sunday we ended up winning because we reaffirmed what we wanted to reaffirm. We barely won the next Sunday, but we did win. So it's just a lesson that sometimes even you can have all this and you can think you know the right thing to do, but you end up making mistakes. So I don't think there's any conclusion, but you have to put conclusion at the end slide, right? Because I definitely have no conclusion about anything. In fact, I'm more confused now than I was 20 years ago when I started trying to do this. But I think you have to believe in what you do. Like, I believe in the brand of hurling we played. I believe in the way we played it. I believe we made mistakes. We tried to change things, but I believe in it. And you have to look at constantly seeking improvement. I'll go back to the fundamental point of coaching, in my view. is to challenge performance in yourself, in your squad, in your management team, in your backroom team. You have to challenge to be the best you can be. If you want to be innovative, and the best hurling team at the moment are constantly innovating, The best hurling team are constantly innovating. People look at, say, the likes of Kilkenny and say, are they, they are constantly innovating. If you want to be the best, you've got to be innovating, and you've got to be ahead of the curve. If you're following, you're losing. If you're following, you're losing. And that's certainly what I learned. You have to be going about the way you want to do it. You've got to take collective ownership. And that means you've got to understand what you're trying to do. I was lucky enough to be working in Barcelona last week. So I went to see Barcelona FC play Atletico Club from Bilbao, right? They won 6-0. I was on my own, just went to the match. I was sitting beside this Spaniard, right? And the people around me were only interested in the way Barcelona played. The goals came. What they wanted to see was players on the ball. What they wanted to see was how the way they played was important as the goals. Now, they're lucky to have the best players. They usually win the matches. But there was no doubt in my view in that stadium that stadium had a particular view of how the game should be played. That's has to be developed. It has to be understood within a county, within a club. What is it the way your club wants to play? Is it different for the under-14 manager, the under-16 manager, the minor manager? We're all under pressure as managers. Yeah, we all want to deliver a championship, but it has to come from somewhere. There has to be a philosophy here that this is the way we play here. And even if we don't reach it, we can't be Barcelona, in a hurling sense. But what we can do is we can have a vision that's discussed and shared. I can discuss my view with you as the other manager, and it's not taken from me or you. I can discuss a vision with some of the county managers, as I've done, and it's not taken or given from either of us. There are legitimate ways to learn. You have to push the boundaries out in order to get better. Do the small things right. To me, the small things are all the time. For me, it's all about technique. It's all about skill level. It's about the level of where you develop the player, and then you build around their attributes around the work rate, their mental development, their strength. All of that is built around. But the game is about skill. The game will live and die. I asked the question at the beginning of this talk: what's the essence of the game? The essence of the game. A man who retired recently again, a Kilkenny man. Another man who retired recently, Donal O'Grady from Limerick. Yeah. The essence of the game, Richie Power from Kilkenny retired, Donal O'Grady. The essence of the game of those players. Yeah, these are brilliant players. Yeah, who had technique, who had skill levels, what we remember about them. That is what we want to develop. The winning and the losing comes for most of us later, and some of us it never comes. But we can always develop that culture, that skill culture, that confidence that a young player would have. And the essence of the coach, in my view, is, you get a short time with a player, and then they fly. And then they are who they are. Then you're gone. You're invisible. You just disappear. It's not you, it's them. They're the ones who will carry on the game. You're the ones who will give them something. You're the ones who will meet them for a short period, right? And allow them to fly. Not sometimes even teach them to fly, but allow them to fly by the words you say. And that's a powerful tool. That's a powerful tool to have in your armory, whether you're a hurler or a footballer, a coach. But it's theirs, not yours. That's the key element. They're the ones who will take on the game. And I think the other thing is to surround yourself, and really strongly surround yourself with good people. That's really key. For one thing, going back to what I said, relax. This should be an enjoyable experience for us. It's the nature of what we do. Whether we're down at our club in the field, with nobody there, or, in Seppel Stadium, this has to be enjoyable. If it's a chore, I think you should find something else to do. Because, we work. This is an amateur organisation. Our goal is to develop community, to understand the culture of what we're doing, right? it's meant to be something that's creative. It's not meant something to be a chore. So surround yourself really by people who have the same ideas as yourself. Develop and support thinkers and leaders. Never be afraid to develop people smarter than yourself. Because what you want are smarter players than you. You know, like there are players that I would have coached at Tipperary who are far ahead of what I could ever teach them. Current Tipperary players that I won't name, you know, who are far ahead of whatever I could teach those guys. In terms of understanding the game, understanding movement, understanding this, right? And it's to understand that in a sense you're trying to develop them and allow them to play. And it's continual learning and development, continual for yourself. Remember to give yourself the opportunity to learn in the job. And I suppose the one thing to learn is again, it's that phrase, Beckett's phrase that's often used, never fear failure. Because failure is almost inevitable for a lot of us. Never fear it. Embrace it. You have to listen to noise. There'll be people telling you what you should have done. That's just all part of life. And the one thing about a hurling game or a football game at a community level, at a club level, it's part of the culture, what we're in. It's part of the community. It would be fairly weird if people weren't giving out about you. When I watch Tipperary next year, I'm going to be saying, well, why didn't they do that? Would they not have done that? So it's part of the community which we live in. Yeah? So never fear it. And I would say embrace it. Embrace it. And then if it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well. It's a part of your life, yeah, but it should never define you. There are many attributes if you're a good coach or a coach trying for success, and this is to go back to the title, Coaching for Success. What do you want to do? For me, it's about wanting to watch them fly. That's what I want. Whether it's at an under 14 level, it's about wanting to watch what they can achieve as much as anything else. So you define what's your success within the culture of the game. And you know what? Sometimes we can feel sorry for ourselves. If only we'd done this. There's people telling me about matches I lost for Kilroy McDonagh 40 years ago. If I'd only done this. Luck gives and takes. You never know how lucky you are. For me, involved at an elite level, for me being involved in games, high-level games, how lucky I have been, how privileged I've been. I was down in Kilkenny in 2013 when they beat us down in Nolan Park. There's been no bigger and better experience I have on that pitch, even though we lost. Now, I understood what was going on that day. There was a local rivalry. This is a game to match all games, anywhere in the world, that we were putting on as an association here, where two teams were battling it out, and one team won and another lost. My team lost. But I know that my players gave everything on that day. Like, to be there was a privilege, and to have that look. And all of the time, you have that too. We have that too in our under 14, under 16 games. And anyway, look gives and takes. Stay standing long enough, right? And stay involved long enough to test the theory that look sometimes turns. Thanks very much.